Good afternoon. Welcome to EduSat Network. Friend, we have organized 2 lectures on decoding Indian society. We'll try to understand the Indian society from sociological perspective. We'll try to understand in today's lecture particularly, because today is introductory lecture, we'll try to know the basic structure and how it could be explained through the sociological perspective. Over the years, the Indian society has faced different different forces are shaping, and different forces are giving a kind of input in the Indian society, and it's evolving in fact. So we will try to understand the Indian society in a different perspective and different sociological way to looking at it. So we will try to understand this way. And for discussion on this very topic, we have in the studio eminent social science thinker, Dr. Subhas Mahapatra. He teaches sociology in Delhi University, and in last 20 years he has not only given a lecture on different forum and explained the Indian society in different perspectives. So I think his knowledge and the experience and exposure to the different group of the Indian society has given a kind of insight that we will come to know in today's lecture. So on your behalf, I welcome him for the EduSat lecture on this very topic. So on your behalf, I welcome you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Kumar. It's a great pleasure for me to be back once again to EduSat Network and to address to the students and colleagues all over the country on the dynamic topic of making sense of India or introspecting Indian society. When the question of making sense of India develops, 2 ideas come to my mind. One is India imagined, and second is India experienced. When I speak about India imagined, I always keep in mind how India is imagined by different bodies of people at different points of time. The whole idea of India is evolving from the outsiders coming to India and looking at a body of culture evolving in the banks of river Indus. Some call this as Hindustan, others call this as India. But India as a political entity is obtaining its credence mostly from the colonial administrators and rulers, though India as a kind of cultural heritage, India as a kind of society is having a historicity of centuries together. First, I'll be explaining about colonial view of India. Then I'll be talking about how nationalists developed imagination of India and how India shaped up as a country by the colonial rulers at different points of time. Then how during post-colonial period, our imagination of India, our impression of India went for change. And in contemporary context, how sociologists are addressing to India, highlighting on different issues and different problems. If you look at India as imagined by colonial scholars, the colonial scholars developed 2 kinds of understanding about India. One kind of understanding was purely a pessimistic understanding. Another kind of understanding was a form of optimistic understanding. Many colonial scholars considered India as a land of poverty, hunger, destitution, blind beliefs, superstitions, and they believed that India is a white man's burden. It was perceived that India cannot grow, as a country it cannot develop without the help of the Britishers. British must have to give a new direction to India by giving them new forms of education, introducing reform, eliminating superstitions. Britishers give a new direction to India to evolve as a civilized world, to evolve as a kind of society which can be comparable to any developed countries of the world. Therefore, British are not coming to India to benefit from India. Britishers are coming to India to help Indians out, to guide Indians in the path of development and progress. Another body of colonial rulers, administrators and scholars, they consider India as a land of dreams, as a land of imagination, as a land of happiness, as a land of culture, as a land of peace and tranquility. Many of them believed that the greatest civilization of the world started from India. Max Muller went to the extent of telling that Aryan Hinduism is the most ancient religion ever known to mankind. Andrew Lang, Theosophical Society, Asiatic Society of Bengal, conducted research on the culture and heritage of India to find out that Indian culture is so rich, so unique, so historic, so exclusive, that one can establish a connectivity between Indian culture and civilization with that of Greek civilization, Roman civilization, Mesopotamia civilization. Therefore, all world civilizations obtained cultural radiation that developed in case of India. So, therefore, colonial understanding of India, imagination of India is greatly contradictory or paradoxical. If one looks into this paradoxical imagination of colonial India, one would be finding out that colonial rulers, by appreciating India, glorifying India, created a kind of space in Indian minds so that Indians can be accepting them as their mentor, as their savior, as their guide. And that consolidated colonial rule in Indian society. Secondly, this kind of imagination about India as a land of great culture, great tradition, unified different bodies of Indians to come under a common platform and to initiate reform programs in India to take India from the world of darkness to the world of enlightenment. In this context, I will be bringing in the reforms initiated by Arya Samaj movement, Brahmo Samaj movement, and other kinds of initiatives taken up by the Indian intelligentsia of that period. You find out Arya Samaj movement gave importance on looking back to Vedas. It conceptualized that Vedas are the all source of knowledge. May it be dance, may it be drama, may it be music, may it be craft, may it be literature, may it be mathematics, may it be town planning, may it be medicine. All possible form of knowledge are coming out of Vedas. While going back to Vedas, we should extract the best possible knowledge from out of European literatures as well. Therefore, synthesis of knowledge derived from out of our own culture with that of Western source of knowledge can evolve India into a great civilization. Therefore, confluence of East and West, bringing certain kind of radical reforms in our own institutions, questioning to casteism, untouchability, dictatorship, abandoning the evil practices like child marriage, India can grow up into a civilization which is unparalleled, unbeatable, exclusive and historic. Similarly, absolute reform of Indian culture and taking Indian culture in the direction of modernity was also spelled out by Ram Manohar Roy, Keshav Chandra Sen. So these people, they advocated that India should go for women's education. India should go for bringing an end to caste system. India should be going for secular credentials and values. So all evil practices present in case of India, if they die out through different kinds of initiatives, then India can evolve into a great nation, giving people opportunity to enjoy freedom, enjoy liberty, enjoy secularism, enjoy equality. So therefore these reform programs initiated by Indian intellectuals imagine India as a land of hope, as a land prepared for development, a land which is prepared for progress. And if all Indians go for progress, development, bringing reforms in certain core areas, then India will be unbeatable. India will be highly developed, progressive, and modern society. These two visions of India, initiated by Arya Samaj movement and Brahmo Samaj movement, had a big impact on India's nationalist movement. If you look into India's nationalist movement, two groups of people evolved. One are the moderates and others are the extremists. Moderates strongly believed that Indians should be creating a space for themselves in public services, policing system, judicial system, education system, and Indians should be asking for their rights through different kinds of legislations or by pleading for their case in court of law. Therefore, British has given us a kind of weapon to fight for justice in the form of legal court. Therefore, if Indians are discriminated in any frontiers, we should be asking for our right. Therefore, revolution is not a means to ask for justice and equality. Conformity to rules of law should be the potential medium through which Indians should be obtaining equality at par with their European counterparts. Lot many things happened during this period, like, partition of Bengal. Then you find out agrarian conditions were miserable. Industrial classes are not very happy with the programs of the moderates. As a result of which, a body of extremists came into prominence. And extremists realized that unless India stands unified together, unless Britishers are driven out of the country, it is very difficult to address the core problems like poverty, illiteracy, exploitation, that is affecting to the fortunes of the people of India. So therefore, these extremists, they used Hinduism as the major platform to bring all Indians together so that a nationalist movement or awakening movement can develop. Therefore, the leaders like Bankim Chandra, Tilak, Arvind Ghosh, all of them came together and glorified the idea of Indianness. Tilak initiated Ganesh Puja in Bombay. And Bankim Chandra categorically pointed out that nationalism is not a political program. It's a form of religion. One should be admiring, worshipping to one's nation. Just one is worshipping to his mother and motherland. As a result of that, Hinduism created a kind of platform to bring different castes, different communities to a common frontier to initiate nationalist movement in India. Therefore, India is a creation of nationalist movement for India's freedom. Therefore, imagination of India as a free country can go to the credit of the nationalist leaders. They initiated the idea that Swaraj is one's birthright. Therefore, the whole idea of independent India is a brainchild of the nationalist leaders of India. At the same time, if you look into India, imagined by the colonial rulers, they felt that India is a vast country, not in terms of territory, but also in terms of language, in terms of caste, in terms of ethnicity, in terms of religion. Lot much of diversities are present in India. And people of India are ruled by their territorial rulers. And most of the time, a territorial ruler is living at peace with the other rulers in the adjoining territory. Therefore, people so greatly divided politically, socially, linguistically, culturally, to bring them into a common administrative network, Britishers introduced certain kind of centralized institutions. And most important centralized institution introduced by British was Indian civil service. The country was divided into different districts, and the head of the district administration was identified as district collector or district magistrate. Similarly, British introduced Indian education system. English education system was introduced in India. Same kind of education is made available to the people living in different locations. Also, British introduced Indian penal code. Previously, in case of India, caste panchayats, village panchayats, regional panchayats, they are dispensing justice. And justice administered to the people was not defined by the intensity of crime committed by the offender. So, offences were evaluated on the basis of the principles of Dharma Sutra. If a Brahmin is committing crime, he was supposed to get a lighter punishment as against a lower caste. Because Dharma Sutras, which are Brahminic texts, indicated that if a Brahmin is committing a crime, it is just a slip on his part, unintended mistake he has committed. But if a lower caste is committing a mistake, he is suffering from poverty of values, derailed from the basic ideology of Hinduism. Therefore, they need to be punished more severely as against punishment incurred to a Brahmin. Therefore, punishment was defined by identity than on the basis of the intensity of crime. But when British introduced uniform penal code, all people will be subjected to equal kind of punishment depending on the intensity, degree and the form of crime committed by them. Therefore, one kind of law unified India. One form of education unified India. One system of administration unified India. And most importantly, British introduced one form of land tenure system, one form of industrial policy. Though primarily land tenure system, industrial policy, forest policy worked to the advantage of British, but one kind of public policy for all the people of India evolved a sense of Indianness. Therefore, administratively, India became one unit. Politically, India became one unit. In terms of rules of law, India became one. Therefore, India as a political state, administrative order evolved during British time. Therefore, state of India is a colonial construct. But society of India is a product of people's association with each other, which is historic, which is cultural in character. Therefore, one should not be making a confusion between making of Indian state with that of making of Indian society. People make society, rulers make state. Therefore, state and society relationship has always been dynamic, because state wants to create a political order. People want to create a society on the basis of their choice. All through Indian history, there has been a kind of dichotomy between society of India and state of India. This is not just a colonial phenomena, also this contest between state and society, interface between state and society is a contemporary situation which is addressed and explained by sociologists in different ways. India got its independence. And when India got its independence, it evolved into a political state. And who were instrumental for creating this India or making of this India? Different bodies of scholars, they have different opinions. If you look into the explanations of Professor A.R. Desai, who is a Marxist scholar, he tells India's independence was largely a class movement. Industrialists joined this India's nationalist movement considering that when India gets its independence, they will get a chance to benefit from industrialization process. Therefore, colonial rulers during British regime, they are going for preferential trade agreement, protections were given to European traders. So Indian traders, Indian businessmen, they thought on the event of India's independence, economic benefit will be coming to them as against the benefit that is incurred to the traders and mercantilists, those who are coming from British origin. Similarly, landlords joined this nationalist movement, considering that if they join this movement, they will be benefiting from land tenure policy which is introduced during post-independence period. Similarly, you will be finding out that workers, farmers, peasants, driven by their self-centric interest, they joined nationalist movement. So the foundation to nationalist movement in India was purely economic. And Indian middle class thought that government services, which is so long being primarily dominated by the British people, will be coming to their control during post-independence India. They are driven by needs. People went for nationalist movement. It is not love for nation, empathy for nation, concern for nation that gave rise to Indian nationalism. Therefore, Indian nationalism, which was initiated by Indian middle class, subsequently involved different other classes. Therefore, a class movement, when got expanded, it evolved into a mass movement. Interestingly enough, other historians advocate that India got its independence without Indians. When Indians were sleeping with poverty, with ignorance, they were sleeping with hopelessness, landlessness, casteism. At that point of time, the great nationalist leaders came. People fondly addressed them in kinship terms. Mahatma Gandhi, the father of the nation, became Bapuji. Pandit Nehru, the first Prime Minister of the country, became Chachaji. Therefore, Bapu and Chacha are coming to people in the middle of the night on 14th August 1947, telling the children of India, get up from sleep, you have become independent. People didn't know what is democracy. They never had experience with democracy. They never know how to primarily work on democracy. But democracy was given to them by the people who fought for India's independence belonging to middle class. Therefore, middle class Indians, those were nationalist leaders, mobilized masses, made India independent, and gave people democratic state when the people didn't have any kind of knowledge about democracy, forget about evolving capacity to run the democracy. Democracy works in a society when people are ready for democracy. when democracy is given to the people and people are not ready for it, it is obvious that primordial forces, vested interest, they capture democracy, and ultimately democracy becomes a skeletal democracy, elitistic democracy, class-based democracy than people's democracy. So, we find out these kind of problems are still persisting in India. Always we have to keep in mind that time present and time past, both present in time future. Britain became a democracy when people demanded for it, worked for it. America became a democracy not because of the fact few people made democracy, others primarily got involved in it. But India is a classic example where democracy was handed over to the people in an institutional manner. And people's mindset was purely traditional, conventional, and hierarchical. To cite certain examples, I'll be telling you that most of the princely states who agreed to make India were persuaded, were lured by the nationalist leaders of that time. People living in different regions, they had strong affiliation with their territorial ruler. When the territorial ruler agreed to become a part of India, Indian state, so people didn't realize the difference between being a citizen of India or being primarily a citizen of a territorial state ruled by a particular ruler in terms of heredity. Therefore, people had faith in hierarchy, they had faith in heredity, and that faith persisted. But the only change that took place is that ruler who was territorial is signing an agreement with the state of India that from now on he will become a part of state of India in exchange of certain kind of benefits. Therefore, democracy in case of India is coming from above. A democratic culture is not developed in the grassroots. When I speak about democratic culture, I don't only speak about political democracy. I talk about social democracy. I talk about economic democracy. I talk about democratic values taught, experienced through education. Therefore, to make democracy democracy, we have to go for democratic experimentation of different types, experience of different types, and make people prepared to go for democracy, which can be benefiting them in diversified ways. So that never took place in case of India. So therefore, the crisis of democracy we see today in different forms, I'll be discussing that after a point of time, is a problem of history, is a problem of time that is being carried forward from one point of time to another point of time in Indian history. Let us look into post-independence India, how India evolved. Then we'll be making sense of decoding India. Post-independence India, if you look into, it amalgamated different religions, different caste, different race, different regions, linguistic groups, tribal groups, to come as an unified political entity. Article 1 of Indian Constitution tells India, that is Bharat, is a union of states. The post-independent India, constitutional India, is evolving into a political state. And in this political state, preamble of Indian Constitution tells, we should be glorifying the values of liberty, freedom, equality, justice, and at the same time, common citizenship should be extended to everybody. Nobody should be discriminated on the basis of caste, creed, religion, and other kinds of primordial identities. Therefore, India in past, that was a caste India, religious India, will be converted into an India that is equalitarian, that India bounded by rules of law than Dharma Sutras. Therefore, India in past will be different from India today. So today's India will be inclusive, equalitarian. India in case of past was greatly hierarchical in character. Substance for the making of India in past came from religion. So new religious text for modern India is Indian constitution. So therefore, there is a kind of change taking place in India. India of past should be different from India today, modern India. If we look into modern Indian society is always considered as a sociological treasure. I will be bringing in here few sociologists and how these sociologists are making attempts to decoding India. One sociologist who strikes my mind most is Emil Durkheim. Durkheim tells that the subject matter of sociology is social facts. Facts which are present in social life. Facts which are empirically observable. Facts which are persistent in character. Facts which will not change by simply change in the will of individual persons are social facts. These social facts are the subject matter of sociology. If I apply this Durkheim's theory to decode Indian society, I find out caste system in case of India is a social fact. It is persistent in Indian society since centuries together. And essentiality of making sense of India through the lens of caste is being understood, explained, analyzed in the writings of many sociologists, including M.N. Srinivas. Therefore, Srinivas sociology is often considered as making sense of India through the lens of caste. I'll be taking up that subsequently. Also, one can look into religion. Different kinds of religions are present in India. Many times these religions are coexistent, conforming to secular credentials spelled out by the Constitution of India. In some occasions, for different reasons, various religious communities are engaged in contest and conflict with each other. Therefore, communalism in India is a sociological fact. Mutual coexistence of different religions or secularism in India is also a social fact. Also, one can make sense of India by looking into tribe-caste relationship. At times it is harmonic, at times it is contesting, at times it is conflicting. So therefore, tribe-caste relationship, tribe-tribe relationship, inter-caste relationships, one can make sense of India by looking into these potential realities we are encountering with in our everyday life. Also, we can make sense of India by looking into different linguistic groups. A dialect is becoming a language. A linguistic community is trying to identify their language as official language. And once you get an official language status, then obviously there are few languages striving for classical language status. So over language there is a kind of conflict. So therefore, linguistic conflict, linguistic identity, political mobilization on the basis of language are also the domains of sociology which can be considered as social fact. Therefore, everything present in India, whether endorsed by the will of conscience collective or endorsed by the will of selected bodies of people, which are making sense of India, can be considered as social fact. And different sociologists can make sense of Indian society by analyzing, explaining this dynamic nature of social fact. Second sociologist who comes to my mind is Karl Marx. Marx speaks about making sense of society, looking into the interface between economic structure and other superstructural institutions. If continuously economic structure is changing, the impact and influence of this economic structure can be felt in the superstructural institutions. India went for land reform, but landless didn't get access to land. And the consequence of this landlessness got manifested in terms of Naxalite movement in India. The Naxalite movement was a movement for right for land. Therefore, economic base facing different kinds of contradiction had a large impact in the political structure of the society. Similarly, different kinds of poverty alleviation measures initiated during 4th plan period to 7th plan period. Or for that matter, you can look into different kinds of cooperative movements. So, transformations taking place in the economic base is benefiting to rich farmers, medium farmers, or green revolution for that matter. All these forces are giving rise to a body of dominant class. And this dominant class, benefiting from cooperative movement, benefiting from green revolution, benefiting from other economic discourses, are developing political aspirations. That gives rise to the growth of dominant class. And these dominant class are constituting political parties, going for political bargains, and evolving into powerful persons in Indian polity. Therefore, it will not be inadequate to say that rise of petty bourgeois and bourgeois in the countryside is not having just an impact in the economic structure. These bourgeois, petty bourgeois controlling economic structure are also controlling the political apparatus. Therefore, change in economy is giving rise to change in politics. So, therefore, India is getting independence without Indians. Masses are landless. Masses suffer from poverty despite different kinds of developmental programs. And these hungry and angry masses don't have any option left out than to go for revolution as and when they are ready for it. Globalization came. And globalization came with dreams. It came with promise. It came with fascination. And the supporters of globalization believed it will generate employment, eradicate poverty, bring India into the map of the great economic mights of the world. But we have seen more globalization evolved in India, more popular culture developed, consumerism developed, food habits changed, green coconut, traditional lassi are replaced by cold drinks. Visiting to McDonald's is becoming similar to visiting a pilgrim centers. People, they are very much the youthful generation, they know when is the Valentine Day. But hardly they remember when is Ram Navami, when is Janmashtami. Therefore, deculturation is taking place in a very big way. People's culture, traditional culture is replaced by popular culture. People are living a fast and furious life. Technology of waste is being used by farmers, peasants, horticulturists in search of economic gain. So because of this globalization, we thought huge employment opportunities will be created. It has been created, no doubt in that. But more and more number of people are joining informal sector. Rural population now is migrating to urban center. There is a pressure on urban infrastructure. Inhospitable living conditions are tolerated here. Paradox of development is seen everywhere. Therefore, globalization came. Absolute poverty is replaced by relative poverty. The cost of the basic food items are increasing sky high. Purchasing power of the people is not constantly increasing. Inflation is so high that getting livelihood is becoming a big question for the life of the Indians. Therefore, if one is going by rough estimates, 56% of Indian population need to be covered by food security. If we have globalization, but still food security is a big question, it means globalization has made poorers further poor, rich people further rich. There is a multiplicity of billionaires in India, and at the same time, real poverty is also intensified. These are the issues, these are the questions which are taken up by the Marxist sociologists when they are introspecting India, decoding India, understanding India, making a sense of India. I will not be primarily doing my job appropriately unless I look into the reaction of the Marxist to tribal mobilization in different parts of the country. Marxist and humanist as well, when they make sense of India, decoding India, they see that all the developmental programs initiated by the state of India from colonial period to contemporary times is involving human cost, ecological cost. And this human cost, cultural cost, ecological cost of development cannot be compensated in terms of money. It's very interesting to note that when colonial rulers came to India, they threw tribes away from the forest, from those forests where the forest resources did carry a high economic value in the world market. Protected forests, reserve forests were created, and these forests were full up with teak and timbers, which were carrying high market value in the world market. Any tribesman entering to venture into this protected and reserve forest was identified as a criminal tribe, and he was subjected to capital punishment. A tribe cannot have right over his land, a land in which he's lived all his life, a forest from out of which he got his cultural identity. Therefore, the tribesman who got his name from the forest, finding out his ancestors' root in the forest, he is thrown out of the forest because forest came to the control of the state or forest department of the state. India got its independence, but tribes' displacement from land, from forest never stopped. We went for industrialization in post-independent India, and Nehru was the architect of industrialization in India. He initiated big industries in the resource-rich regions of the country. Millions of tribal families were displaced, and these tribal families were never ever subjected to rehabilitation. They went for mass migration to different domains. They lost out their culture. They became the worst victims of development. Name Hirakud Dam project, name Tata mining projects, name Rengali project, Silent Valley project, any hydroelectricity project, mining project, industrial project, urbanization project is having a massive human cost and massive ecological cost. Therefore, in the name of development, the local people sacrifice their culture, their livelihood. They are subjected to depeasantization, detribalization, and deculturation. So these tribal groups, who have been continuously becoming the victims of developmental displacement, now raising their voice, asking for justice. At times, they are going for mobilization. they are going for protest, at times they are going for militantistic activities. We have to introspect here that behind every possible mobilization there is an economic root, there is a cultural genesis. Therefore, we have to reorient our developmental policy in such a way that developmental displacement will be having least of ecological cost and minimum human cost, socio-cultural cost, and people, those who are losing out their territoriality, their identity from out of development program, they should be benefiting from the development program initiated in these areas. They should be the major stakeholders in special economic zones. They should be given proper training to benefit from out of developmental programs. Unless until we look into that, resistance will continue, protest will continue, and challenges will continue. Therefore, Marxist sociologists are looking into these kind of problems when they are decoding India. Therefore, India is decoded by scholars belonging to different traditions in diversified ways. Another body of scholars who are decoding India are the feminist sociologists. It's very interesting to note that sociological knowledge of India cannot ever be complete without understanding India from a feminist perspective. Feminists look at family, look at marriage, look at mode of production, political structure, being sensitive towards women and gender issues. It's very interesting to note that we consider family is a paradise on this earth. But hidden within family is the culture of patriarchy. When a boy is born, he is given a masculine name. Bahadur Singh, Baliyar Singh, Hoshiar Singh. When a girl is born, she is giving a musical soft name. While naming the child, we make gender discrimination. When we are choosing clothes for the children, colorful clothes are given to a girl. So the clothes and colors meant for a girl is different from the colors and clothes meant for a boy. When a boy is doing something good, he is appreciated as brave boy. When a girl is doing something good, she is appreciated as a sweet girl. Therefore, naming them different, dressing them different, appreciating them different, and socializing them different. We create a woman from body of a person. Therefore, a woman is not born, she is made by gender socialization. And India is such a culture. The birth of a woman is following certain kind of rituals, different from the ritual meant for the birth of a son. And always for family, the marriage of a daughter is more important. But socio-economic security is more important for a boy. Therefore, studies indicate spending on women's health, spending on women's education, spending on primarily, women's everyday needs is much more less as against the spending on a boy. Therefore, family makes a discrimination between a man and a woman, boy and a girl. Also, studies imply that gender roles don't change within family. If both these couple are equally educated, domestic activities are not separated from a woman. Both men and women, they make money for the family, earn for the family. But traditional family role like cooking, child rearing are the women's domain. Therefore, man's work is different from woman's work. Therefore, family made that discrimination. And that discrimination is a culturally defined discrimination, socially recognized discrimination. And that discrimination is not felt most of the time. That need to be decoded by gender feminist sociologists. Also, feminist sociologists look at the persistence of gender inequality in society for the reason that most of the productive labor of women is used for reproduction purpose. A woman is giving maximum of her productive labor in reproductive activities and in domestic activities. And when she is working in household, most of the time, her labor is unpaid for. Her labor is absolutely unrecognized. Therefore, feminist sociologists advocate to promote equality between men and women, economic equity should be given importance. Therefore, women should be paid for their household work. And reproductive responsibility will be taken up by women, but child rearing should not be only women's role. So therefore, they look into marriage, family as the institutions created by the culture that is developing a hierarchical relationship between a man and a woman. If you look at India, the institution of dowry is a product of culture. How greatly a girl may be educated, how she may be settled down in her life, but when dowry is given at the time of marriage, it is institutionalizing the inferiority of women. And M.N. Srinivas has told rightly that dowry is a form of modern sati. More we are becoming progressive as a country, as a nation, more intensive is becoming the practice of dowry. Therefore, many patriarchal institutions are present. Family is a patriarchal institution. Marriage is a patriarchal institution. Childbirth is a patriarchal institution. Dowry is a patriarchal institution. When we are studying Indian society, we do not have to study India from economic standpoint. We do not have to study India through different kinds of dispersed social fact. Make sense of India from gender perspective. Also, many feminists, look at sacred text of India. You look into Ramayana. Sita had to give the proof of her chastity, purity, by passing through fire gate. Therefore, from historic period to contemporary times, women are subjected to different kinds of trials and tests. Their body is being used as a reproductive mechanism. And they reproduce children. Over these children, they don't have any right. Therefore, feminist sociologists advocate that to make modern India, we should have to have a space where gender equality should be established. May that be political structure, education structure, social structure like family and kinship. You cannot build up modern India without bringing gender justice into the central platform. Therefore, when we are decoding India, we have to make sense of India, holding different sociological theories as the parameters. Therefore, we have different sociologies, those who are looking into India, different facets of India from different theoretical standpoints. Now, let me tell you what Indian sociologists do. What are the institutions they study? There are some institutions present in India which are unique to Indian society itself. For instance, caste system in India is unique to Indian society. You can make sense of India by looking into changing family structure. You can make sense of India looking into linguistic diversities. You can look into India analyzing tribalism in Indian society. I'll be spending little time on these issues to explain how these are becoming the subject matters of Indian sociology through which we make sense of India. In brief, because of paucity of time, in brief I'll be telling you that caste as centrality to India has always been a major concern of Indian sociologists from 1960s even till to date. I'll be classifying sociologists reflecting on caste into four groups. One group of sociologists look at caste as a product of Indian culture, as a product of Indian civilization, which is static, hierarchical, unchanged, driven by absolute values. Louis Dumont, in his book Homo Hierarchicus, advocates that centrality to caste system is the dichotomy between the ideology of purity and pollution. In case of India, mind divides things, beings, places, realities into pure or impure. Grey hair is impure, temple is pure. Vegetarian food is pure, non-vegetarian is impure. Therefore, everything pure is present in case of Brahmins. Therefore, Dumont tells Indians consider whether Brahmin is educated or uneducated, wealthy or poor. A Brahmin commands respect because he is born as Brahmin. Therefore, when we are speaking about Brahmins in India, we are dealing with status structure. People may get wealth in their life, great access to power in their life, but Brahmins stay as Brahmins. Others cannot get into the position of Brahmins. He tells that there are different castes who are proclaiming Brahminic status. He tells, proclaiming Brahminic status is one question, obtaining Brahminic status is another. This is one way of looking into caste as a hierarchical system, unchangeable system, static system, which is unique to India. Therefore, caste in India cannot be compared with class in case of West, Louis Dumont. There is a large body of liberal structure functional theorists looking at caste. M.N. Srinivas, Milton Singer, F.G. Bailey, William Weiser, and a whole lot of other people. They say caste is changing. During colonial period it changed, post-colonial period it is changed. People are getting access to wealth, access to power. Middle caste are becoming prosperous. They are now questioning to Brahmins, getting into important positions in political sphere. Therefore, caste is a dynamic system. Therefore, caste being a dynamic system, mobility being present in caste system, caste in India can be equated with caste in case of class in case of Western society. Therefore, both caste and class are stratificational systems. The degree of mobility present in them is different in terms of degree, not in terms of kind. Third group of people are Dalit sociologists. They consider caste as a Brahminic construct. Dalit culture stands for materialism. Brahminic culture stands for spiritualism. Brahminic culture is otherworldly culture, believes in hierarchy. Dalit culture believes in equality. This Brahminic culture was enforced on Dalits, for which they were subjected to exclusion from mainstream life of the society. They didn't have right to meaningful occupation, right to land holding, right to live with dignity. Therefore, there is an urgency to rectify historical mistake by going for Dalit mobilization. To make India a just society, revolution is essential, and that revolution should come from grassroots to the mobilization of Dalits. Therefore, different sociologists are addressing to the question of caste, question of tribalism. They address to the question of linguistic differences among the people, and on the basis of that, they make sense of India. Therefore, decoding India requires theoretical paradigm, methodology. India has got a vast body of empirical realities, cultural, social, economic, and reflecting on these realities in terms of theory and methods, sociologists make sense of India.
So, well friends, it was indeed a pleasure listening to Dr. Mahapatra, who delivered on this very topic, decoding Indian society. He not only talked about the unique feature of Indian society, but also illustrated how the eminent scholar, eminent sociologist has explained the sociological phenomena. So I think you have understood the topic. I thank all of you for watching the lecture. On behalf, I thank Dr. Subhas Mahapatra for giving such an insightful lecture on this very topic. Thank you very much.